we're in St. Petersburg, Russia, strolling on the Nevsky Prospect, the main street in downtown St. Petersburg. We enjoy visits to palaces as well as the Hermitage Museum you see here. It's housed in one of the greatest palaces in all of Europe. It was the private residence of the Tsars, and now it's a great art museum. We're now visiting the world-famous Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, which is the largest art museum in the world. And it has got an incredible collection of Russian history as well as French Impressionist and Italian Renaissance. There's decorative arts, there's amazing rooms like this one with golden columns and white walls. Much of the architecture is in the Russian classical style, which is a variation on neoclassical with some Baroque elements thrown in. So it's highly decorated, the most beautiful collections in all of Russia. This is where the Tsar had their own private collections, which grew and grew and finally became the largest public collection of art in the world. The museum has a variety of types of art ranging from the decorative to the architectural and sculptural, as well as great paintings from the masters. Our guide, Olga, takes us around.
So now we are making a circle till we come back to the same staircase, and we went downstairs for a short rest. Okay? So after the dinner, after lunch, sorry, you will come back by the same staircase. We will start from this room and walk through this picture gallery here, because we are entering the building of the small Hermitage. The picture galleries can be divided into several buildings. Altogether, this is called Hermitage Picture Galleries. The Winter Palace and the Hermitage Picture Galleries. The Hermitage Picture Galleries are subdivided into the small Hermitage, built in the reign of Catherine the Great, the Old Hermitage, built in the reign of Alexander and Nicholas I, and the New Hermitage, started by Nicholas I of Russia. So now we continue along the state rooms of the Tsars. This way, please. So the throne is authentic. In those days, they would sometimes commission furniture abroad just for the fun of it. So this chair was made by the English master Clausen. And that was commissioned for Anna I of Russia, Peter's niece, who ruled the country from 1730 until 1740. The portrait above the chair is the allegoric portrait of Peter the Great of Russia. Okay, so we are now in the audience room because it was used for the participants in the audiences with the Tsars. And this room can be seen in some of the historic paintings when also the Tsar would himself come into the room and pass by the row of visitors, talking to them and shaking hands. The room was also used for the ball parties, and the orchestras then would be playing in the balconies. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are in another state room, which is a memorial room of Russia's victory in the War of 1812. That was when Napoleon invaded Russia. That was part of his Napoleonic Wars in Europe. And his mistake was to start the campaign in the beginning of September. He moved close to Moscow pretty fast. It took him about 3 weeks to be in Moscow, but then he sort of got stuck in the fighting, in the street fighting, in the difficult roads in Russia, and then it grew colder and colder, so by the time he took Moscow, he was already exhausted, and his army naturally was. So he was staying in Moscow for about 2 months. Then there were no food supplies, and Napoleon requested negotiation from the Russian Tsar. The capital then was in St. Petersburg, and the Tsar did not even want to talk to him. And so what happened, Napoleon had to retreat from Russia, and on his way back, he was surrounded by the Russian army, and his army group was virtually destroyed. He only left the country with some 10,000 soldiers of his own regiment, while he entered with 500,000 army. And he had to surrender in Paris. In 1814, and that war was about 2 years long, Russian Tsar Alexander I entered the capital of France. So in this room, they commemorated the Russian generals and the allies of Russia who participated in that campaign. So the equestrian portrait of Alexander I is on your left. You can see two more equestrian portraits of Austrian Emperor Franz I and of the Prussian Emperor Frederick Wilhelm II. So in the reign of Alexander I, you remember, St. Isaac's Cathedral was started, and when his brother Nicholas I came to rule the country, he continued with that construction. And Nicholas I was commemorated with the sculpture in St. Isaac's Square, facing the cathedral. And now, after we had a short rest, we are going further. We will make a short walk in the next room and then go to see the Impressionists' art. So this way, please. Altogether, the Impressionists' art in Russia is spread or separated between two museums, in the Hermitage and in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow. Here we have more Impressionists, while Pushkin Museum has more Post-Impressionists. The display starts with the Barbizon School, with Camille Corot, who were the beginners of this perception of light and its influence on the painting and the people viewing it, and distributed between St. Petersburg and Moscow. So we will walk now through some of the private rooms. You will see more collections displayed there. The Tsar's private rooms were the western facade of the Winter Palace, the second floor of the western facade. This is one of the private rooms. The room is decorated in the pseudo-Russian style, which means that it's exaggerated or emphasized. And then we will go through just come back to the beginning of our tour room. So this way, please. We will now go through some rooms where Nicholas II really lived, and we will go to one more exhibition in the Winter Palace. We are still in the Winter Palace, where the Tsars lived. They would have several suites for different members of the family. In front of you is another throne chair for ceremonial occasions, and above is the two-headed eagle with the St. George slaying dragon in the center, the combination of two emblems of Russia, St. George before Ivan III and the two-headed eagle beginning from Ivan III of Russia.
You're watching the Hawaii Geographic Tour of the Hermitage in St. Petersburg as we enter the Malachite Room.
And malachite here is mosaic. They again put together bits of malachite onto the basement, glued them, and cut so that it resembled a vase. This is a Russian mosaic. The purpose of this room was to bring together all the Romanovs family before ceremonial receptions. We are taking the Minister's Gallery, which is also a picture and tapestries gallery. So we are going this direction. But we are in the museum picture galleries now. So we go even further here. The Old Hermitage is a very unique building. Every room has different decorations. The ceilings, the floors, the doors are different. And the building was mostly used for the exhibitions of Italian art. The artists who are represented here or their works date back to the 15th, 14th centuries, and the collections are arranged retrospectively. This is earlier period, and it keeps going older. Now, speaking about the Hermitage arrangements of the collections, they only were made like we have it today in the middle of the 20th century. When the Tsars were living here, their collections were never systemized. They would have a little bit of everything in each room. Only after the communists came here, made it a museum, then they had it strictly arranged and made it sort of art research and study, but before it was only for the decorative purposes. So this is a totally new arrangement, and the Hermitage galleries in the Tsars times were used for entertainment, not for the study of arts. This is the second quarter of the 15th century. And the most interesting painting here is Fra Angelico da Fiesole. He was a monk in the monastery in the Italian town Fiesole, and he painted frescoes. So it shows to you that when the Russian Tsars wanted to have something in the palace, they would never stop even before cutting half the wall from the monastery and delivering the wall to Russia. Because a fresco cannot be separated from the wall, it's painting on the raw plaster. These are bas-reliefs, and one of the most famous of them is Birth of Christ on your right. So again, you see that Madonna is kneeling here, but she is still a little bit taller than the people around her.
You're watching Hawaii Geographic Society's World Traveler. We're visiting the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia.
So this is the famous Madonna Benois by Leonardo da Vinci. This is one of the first oils, Italian oils, because Leonardo experimented much with paintings, with paints, and because of that, his early oils were not very successful. There are only 14 surviving oils in the world, and this is one of them. It's very colorful, very optimistic picture for those days even, and sometimes it is called Madonna with flower. One more painting by Leonardo. This is a different manner of painting. It is made in tempera. So this is one of the mature Leonardos in the Hermitage Museum. While the previous painting was his earlier period, this is mature Leonardo. And it's very beautifully decorated. So wherever you look, the walls, the doors, it's all very beautiful. The doors are the famous buhl technique. If you went to Paris, you definitely heard in Versailles the word buhl. He was the furniture making to the Louis dynasty, and he used gilded bronze and turtle shell. But he made the tables, he made the chests of drawers. Here it's the doors in buhl style. Wherever you see red, it is the turtle shell, and also gilded bronze. The collection starts from Repentant Magdalene. On the left, it's his earlier work. Then there are pictures of Madonna, Christ bearing cross, and Saint Sebastian. From here we go further through the Italian department. Late 16th century, end of Renaissance, and the beginning of the so-called trend of mannerism in Italian art. When Renaissance sort of exhausted itself, they wanted to do something new, and in the elongated figures and very unusual gestures of mannerism, they were looking for new opportunities in pictorial art. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are still in the room of High Renaissance. And this is the room of Raphael Santi. You know that Raphael did not create too many oils. He was mostly painting the Capella, Sistine Cathedral, chapel, and he was working in frescoes mostly. But he contributed to the world art by having very many students, apprentices, and that is why this room is dedicated to Raphael Santi. We are proud to have his very first painting, which he made in his life. This is Madonna Conistabile. He painted the work when he was a young student in the workshop of Perugino, and Raphael was 17 years old at that time. So this is his earliest surviving picture. And the framework is also ascribed to Raphael Santi. You remember probably that he died very young, at the age of some 35 years old, but he left a whole school. This is Caravaggio. He gave the name to the whole school of realistic Italian art of the early 17th century. We have only 2 rooms of the Spanish art, but still we are proud to have the world's second best Spanish collection. And this is because Spanish art was never meant for commercial purposes. It was always religious art, and they would never sell it. The only individual paintings, they never bought it as collection, but it came one painting after another. So we say that we have the second biggest collection after Prado Museum in Madrid. Those of you who are interested in the Italian sculptor Canova, please follow me. I will take you straight to this artist, to this master. Looking at the works of this very famous Italian sculptor, Canova. His sculptures are sometimes called the beautiful beauties. So much of aesthetic art is in them. And the 2 sculptures which match in color, but they are different, they are Peter the Great on the right and Catherine the Great on the left. So you can see all kinds of men of arts along the wall.
Antonio Canova was an Italian sculptor who lived between the 1750s and the 1820s. Cupid and Psyche is one of his more famous pieces. Considered the most important sculptor of his time, he worked in a romantic neoclassical style. There's also a huge collection of paintings by Rembrandt.
And the picture is unusual from the religious point of view because the saints are portrayed as Dutch peasants. And another interesting detail here is Madonna. She is fainting in the corner, in the right part of the picture. And from religion, you know that Madonna never grew old. She was always young. And here Madonna is portrayed as elderly Dutch peasant woman. It is called the Portrait of the Old Man in Red. And they say this man was a favorite model with Rembrandt. Rembrandt used this man for the creation of the so-called portrait biography. When he showed in the face of the man and in his hands all the hard life, his tests that tested him, and the hands are very expressive. You look here. This is one of the masterpieces by Rembrandt, and they say that when he was painting it, he was also experimenting a little bit with the strokes. He could not find the brush which would satisfy him in manner of painting, and he was using his hand a lot. So the feet here were painted by Rembrandt. He just took the paint by hand and he made the strokes. And they found here quite a few fingerprints of Rembrandt in this picture when they were studying it with a microscope. Peter Paul Potter was a famous animalist painter, and he died very young, at the age of 28. He did not even have time to start a school of his own. But yet he was one of the Dutch best animal trend painters, animalistic genre. The interest in this picture is that it was the favorite picture of Napoleon, and it was in his room till the death of the emperor. And we spent some 7 to 10 minutes more for the art lovers here, because here are the paintings of Peter Paul Rubens and Van Dyck in the next room, which are more interesting. He was the court painter to Charles I of England. So this is Rubens and Van Dyck, one of the world's biggest collections, also in the next room. Van Dyck. You remember probably that he was the student in the workshop of Rubens, and a very beautiful self-portrait of Van Dyck in this close to the window, which is very famous. I think that this is about it in the Flemish art, and we start going downstairs.
We retrace our steps back down the ambassador's staircase, a grand entrance to the Tsar's palace. We're taking a little break here at the midpoint of our visit to the Hermitage and having lunch. It's not much of a cafe, just a hamburger counter. They've got sodas, hamburgers, and French fries, and that's about all. And of course, there's a little gift shop. You can purchase your books or reproductions of paintings, little miniature sculptures and vases. So we take a break, take a breather, and then continue with our visit inside the Hermitage.
The world's largest one-piece vase, made in jasper, semi-precious stone in the Ural Mountains. And the reason why they put this vase to the Greek department is because it's so heavy that no floor would hold it, except for the ground floor. Again, this is the 1st, 2nd centuries AD in this hall.
The lower level of the Hermitage has classical statues from ancient Rome and Greece. Here you see a large god. It would have sat inside a Roman temple. By now you've got an idea. The range of art styles in the Hermitage is extremely wide. They have works from the entire Western world.
So from here we are walking to the right and through the Egyptian departments. When we walk through the Egyptian department, you will see all kinds of original Egyptian art, tombs, even one mummy, which is open, it will be on the left side, and lots of small Egyptian pieces. The director of the Hermitage, Boris Piotrovsky, spent all his life doing research in Egyptian collections and Egyptian art. For that, he would go to Egypt very often. He was a friend with many leading Egyptologists of the world, and one of them was his friend from Great Britain. He was husband of Agatha Christie, the famous writer. And that is why Agatha Christie had so much written about Egypt, about pyramids, and about all kinds of mysterious things there, because they were all close friends, by the way. And the motives for some of her novels came from this period. So most of this collection came to be brought to the Hermitage in 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. This is very little, of course. It's just something which is very special that they keep in this room.
Jumping 4,000 years into the future, from ancient Egypt to 19th century Romantic sculpture in France, the art of Rodin. There's about a dozen marble statues by Rodin here in the museum, including the Kiss, the Age of Bronze, beautiful human nudes sculptured in a flowing way,